What's up? Today we'll be discussing the age-old question as to whether or not it's better to pay off the mortgage early or to invest. We'll discuss the concept of opportunity cost and discuss variables such as interest rates, risk tolerance, personal financial goals, tax implications, and liquidity. We'll go over some general guidelines that the experts recommend. At the end, I'll give my own opinion. So if you and your spouse are fighting about this, hopefully this video can help solve the argument. If at any point you decide you like this video and find it helpful, don't forget to hit the like button, because that's what it's there for. Also, if you want some free stuff, feel free to lurk down below and check out the links in the descriptions. You can get free stocks, and also a free $30 to sign up with Rakuten. It's a free site where you can earn cash back on everyday purchases, which will leave you with more money to invest or pay down the mortgage, whichever one you decide. Alright, so as we know, a mortgage is a loan to a borrower for the purchase of a property or home. It's paid off in monthly payments, usually over 15 or 30 years, according to the amortization schedule. In the early years of a fixed loan, much of the payment goes towards interest as opposed to principal. But as the loan balance gets paid down over the years, a larger portion of the loan payment starts to go towards reducing the principal. Given the fact that most of the interest is paid at the beginning, it may seem like a no-brainer to pay down the loan as soon as possible and thus pay as little interest as possible. However, every dollar has an opportunity cost, this being the potential benefit missed out when choosing one alternative over another. So the return on the best foregone option minus the return on the chosen option. Of course, it's impossible to imagine the outcome of every possible allocation of capital, as there are so many investment options. But the broad market is a very easy benchmark to use to weigh opportunity cost. Over the last 100 years, the broad market has averaged 10% a year. So if a homeowner has a 2% mortgage rate on their home, you can see why they might choose to allocate additional money towards the market to get that average 10% return instead of paying off the low interest debt. This example shows the concept. Investor A puts $2,500 a month towards paying off the mortgage early. They pay it off in 22 years, and then they allocate all of that $2,500 a month towards investing in index funds. Investor B takes the whole 30 years to pay off the mortgage, only doing the minimum $2,000 a month house payment and investing $500 a month in index funds. At the end of the 30 years, both investors have a paid-for house, but investor B has a portfolio value of over $1 million. Investor A only has $365,000. But getting back to opportunity cost is not the same for all investors. When you're young, the opportunity cost of money is the highest because of the time value of money. A young investor simply has more time for their investments to compound and grow, compared to an older investor who has less time before retirement. With this, we also need to consider risk tolerance. Because the market simply doesn't go up in a straight line. Roughly 2 out of every 10 years, the market is down. Younger investors can afford to take more risk. They have more time to ride out the volatility because they don't need the money for retirement as soon. But that 10% number that we mentioned before isn't quite as reasonable for an older investor. They have likely de-risked their investment portfolio as they approach retirement. That 10% return could be more like 4 to 5 with a more conservative portfolio. And paying off debt is certainly a form of de-risking. You can see why an older investor would be more likely to just knock out the debt, but a younger investor might prioritize investing as opposed to paying off low interest debt. This chart shows the concept. When you factor in the difference of compounding time and risk tolerance, a 20-year-old investor can have an 88x multiplier on their money by the time they hit retirement, versus 12x for a 35-year-old investor, and then the number only goes down from there. The age that I've heard thrown around is 45 and up. In other words, if someone is over 45, even if they have a super low rate on their house, the opportunity cost of their money is simply much lower than it used to be. So if they want to pay off the low interest debt, mathematically it doesn't matter so much anymore, at least not as much as it does when they're young. But it isn't just age. Some investors are just more conservative than others. Some have more of a risk appetite. Some people are afraid to invest at all, and others will fearlessly ape their life savings into the squid token right before it gets rug pulled and goes to zero.
$1 trillion. And now the market, oh, it went to zero.
And that's why personal finance is personal. Another factor to consider is the tax implications of investing versus paying off the mortgage. In most cases, mortgage interest paid is tax deductible. And the higher tax bracket you're in, the more valuable this becomes. Let's say someone pays $10,000 in mortgage interest in a year, and they're in the 32% tax bracket. When they write this off in their taxes, that's $3,200 that they would have otherwise had to pay in taxes. So you can see why this would cut in favor of investing before paying off the mortgage debt. But that's assuming that itemizing is the best option for the individual, as opposed to just taking the standard deduction. Staying with the theme of taxes, another thing to consider is the kind of brokerage account that you'll be investing the money in. HSAs, IRAs, and 401ks are tax advantage accounts. When you lose money due to taxes in a taxable brokerage account, that is less money that can be compounded in the future, as seen in this graph. So you can see why there would certainly be more incentive for an investor to invest before paying off extra on the mortgage if the money is going into these tax advantage accounts, as opposed to just a taxable brokerage account. I'm not saying that there wouldn't still be some incentive to invest in a taxable brokerage account over paying extra on the mortgage, but less incentive because more of the investment gains will go to taxes. And side note, it's always a good idea to take the employer 401k match before doing anything else. This really has nothing to do with anything, but it's a 100% return on investment, and you don't want to miss out on that. But another factor to consider is inflation. Inflation favors borrowers. In the case of a mortgage, you're essentially borrowing against a depreciating asset, the US dollar, which loses an average 2% of its value a year to inflation, to own an appreciating asset, real estate, which tends to appreciate in value on average 4% a year. So you get to pay back in inflated dollars. Dave Ramsey would probably smack me for talking about debt so favorably.
Somebody ought to smack you. That's stupid. It's stupid.
But even he recommends investing 15% of your income before paying off the house. But after 15%, he tells you to pay down the house. Another factor to consider is liquidity. Home equity is not exactly liquid. Accessing home equity is going to require a home sale, cash out refinance, HELOC, or home equity loan. Granted, using stocks as a piggy bank isn't necessarily a fantastic idea either because you never know if they'll be up or down in the short term, but they certainly are more liquid. But you can also see why someone might just want the freedom of paying off the house, not having a mortgage payment, and thus having much more disposable income when they do pay it off. I suppose another factor could be the state of the market. Like Warren Buffett says, be greedy when others are fearful, be fearful when others are greedy. So if the market has crashed and stocks are on sale, maybe an investor would prioritize investing over paying off the mortgage at this point. When the market rebounds, this can lead to incredible returns. However, if the market is going to the moon and your Uber driver is bragging about how they YOLO'd their life savings into a meme stock and made a killing, maybe the market is at a top. Maybe an investor would prioritize paying a little extra on the mortgage at this point until things chill out. But the problem with this is market timing, and as we know, most people can't time the market. They buy high and panic sell low, so probably just disregard everything I just said. But last but not least, the other factor is interest rates. So you didn't think I was going to forget that one because this is probably the most important thing in the equation. Generally, 1 to 4% is considered low interest mortgage debt. It can be pretty easy for people in this range to justify investing over making extra mortgage payments. 8 to 10% on the other hand, it becomes much more difficult to justify the risk of investing in the market when the average return may only be a few percent higher at best than the amount that you're paying in interest. However, the 5 to 6% region can really depend on the investor's personal situation. Fidelity has a very good write-up on this. They mention a 6% rate as being the tipping point. But to get there, they've made some assumptions with the other variables that we have talked about. The 6% guideline assumes that you've already put away some emergency savings, you've fully captured that employer match, you've paid off any credit card debt. It also assumes that you're investing in a tax advantage account and that the interest on your debt is not tax deductible. So this article is about debt in general, as opposed to being specifically on mortgage debt. The 6% number also assumes you have at least 10 years before retirement and that you're investing in a balanced portfolio with about a 50% allocation to stocks. If you have a more aggressive portfolio, they say you can justify pushing the threshold to 7%. But with a more conservative portfolio, that number can come down to 5%. So what are my thoughts? Luckily for me, my decision is pretty easy. I'm young, I have a pretty aggressive investment portfolio, and I have a 3% mortgage rate. Maxing out the HSA, IRA, and 401k over paying a 3% mortgage is a no-brainer for me, and I believe that investing in a taxable account at this rate is also justified. Not to mention 2022 was the 7th worst year for the stock market since the 1920s. So if stock price is low, I definitely want to be a buyer in this market. I personally wouldn't bother paying down low interest mortgage debt until I was within 10 to 15 years of retirement. And if I've done well with my investments, I always have the option of just selling some stocks and writing a check to pay off the mortgage if I want to. In some cases, having the ability to be debt-free is just as good as being debt-free. But with interest rates rising, it becomes much more a question for people who are getting mortgages now. I think the 6% plus or minus 1% threshold that Fidelity mentioned is pretty appropriate. That seems to be in line with what many experts recommend. I personally would prefer to invest over paying down debt as long as I could justify it with some math. But at the end of the day, I'll do whatever I believe is mathematical optimization. If I were at that 7% threshold, I would probably approach things differently. Or at the very least, I wouldn't be investing additional money in taxable accounts over paying down the mortgage at that rate. But I also understand that personal finance is personal. It's not about mathematical optimization for everyone. If someone really wants the stress-free feeling of being debt-free, I'm not going to argue with them on that, even if it is low interest debt and the math says otherwise. Different strokes for different folks. At the end of the day, personal finance is personal, and it's not like it has to all be one or the other either. An individual can strike a balance between paying off the mortgage and investing however they see fit. But if you found this helpful, consider hitting the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Again, also consider checking out the links down below. Currently down there, you can get 2 free stocks with Webull, potentially valued up to $2,300, $30 with M1 Finance, and $30 with Rakuten. We can get cash back on online purchases. However, these promos do change over time. As always, this is not financial or tax advice, just entertainment purposes only. So thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.